talk a little bit about the history of this Winchester Model 71 lever action rifle. Through probably the worst economic downturn of the 20th century, which devastated my family's life in Saskatchewan, Winchester carried a lot of the old lever action. They were expensive to make. They had the 1886 in 45-70 and 33 Winchester centerfire. They had the Winchester 195, which they sold in 30-40 Craig, 30 Government, 405 Winchester, and 35 Winchester. And you also had the revolution towards bolt-action rifles with returning servicemen from World War I. So there was a fight in Winchester, and there were still some old lever action guys that really loved those old lever guns. And they made an argument to streamline their line by improving the 1886 and coming up with a new cartridge. And they were going to make the 1886 more modern, a little bit easier to manufacture. They were going to modernize the stock. And they were going to come up with a new caliber. The 33 Winchester centerfire in the 1886 and the 35 Winchester centerfire were their premier big game rounds, so they went right in the middle.
Okay, I misspoke there. I said 30-30 in the 1886. The 1886 never shot the 30-30. I meant 33 Winchester centerfire. It was a popular round at the time. Fired a 200 grain bullet at about 2,200 feet per second, so it was a little more than a 30-30. It was a well-respected woods round, moose round. Not that powerful today, but considered quite the thing back then. And the other end is the 35 Winchester centerfire, which fired a 250 grain bullet at just under that speed.
And they went with the 348. They probably also wanted to compete with the 30-06, which was a new round. So they went to a guy called Herman Gerlich, and they looked at the 5110 cartridge, and they came up with a new cartridge. And this new cartridge was the 348. And the 348 had a lot of capacity. It was very tapered, and the capacity was meant to give ballistics like a 30-06. At first it came out with two loads, a 150 grain bullet and a 200 grain bullet. 150 grain bullet was over 2,800 feet per second because velocity had become important. The 200 grain loading was 25-30, which is basically what a 30-06 would get. So they were also working on a Winchester Model 70, which was going to come out in 30-06 and 270 Winchester. And unfortunately, they called this the 71. It was ready earlier. So the 71 was actually earlier than the Model 70. The Model 70 went on to become a fantastic success. This gun held on to, I think, 1958, and they only sold about 70,000 of them. This is a 1955 model. And other things that went into design, they had a team work on the stock. Townsend Wayland was on that team, and this stock, at first I was only looking at the action, but this stock is just such a beautiful stock to use. And the angle for working the lever really makes it easy to operate. And some of the improvements they made, or changes they made over the 86, where they used a flat spring instead of a coil spring, which, or the other way around, actually they used a coil spring instead of a flat spring. They changed the stock design. They switched from the nickel steel to the Winchester proof steel, which they still use to this day. They tapered these lugs, which is interesting when you're hand loading and you get just a little hot. That action springs open a bit, tells you to back off to keep it at about the 35,000 feet or pounds per square inch that this action is designed to use. So this was a wonderful design, but it's an open sight design. It's got top ejection, and people started to move towards longer range shooting, telescopic sights, and this just kind of fell by the wayside. But for actual practical hunting, it is a really fantastic design. I don't have a Model 86, but I do have a 92, which is a mini 86, and You can see it's got a straight stock, not as comfortable to use, but it's a very, very similar action. You can see the family resemblance in the 92, the 86, and the 71. And I've got a 95. This is a new production, and it's a great gun. I really like this gun a lot. And but it's got that straight stock too. Not quite the same kind of style points as you get with the 71. So the 71 is considered perhaps the finest hunting lever action rifle ever made, and yet it was not a success. And that kind of goes sometimes the way things go. I've got the great 350 Remington Magnum and a Remington 660. That's one of my favorite rifles. That also hardly sold at all. And its sister, the 6.5, I have one of those as well. They're fantastic firearms, but they just never sold. Some things capture the imagination of the time, some things don't. Doesn't mean they're not a quality. This is a great quality piece. I'm going to use this for my moose hunt this year. And 250 grain bullets will go 2,300 feet per second. I find 2250 a little bit better because I'm trying to be easy on the action, and that will do just about everything you need done in North America. And anything that you need a little more oomph, this 405 will, like for grizzly bear hunting, maybe the 405 would be a better choice, but I wouldn't feel underarmed with the 348. It is basically 30-06 ballistics. And with the new 200 grain flex tips, it even shoots fairly flat. At 2,500 feet per second, I can get easily a 250 yard gun, perhaps stretch to 300, and the bullets will expand to 300 as I've tested before if you look at some of my earlier videos. So that's a little bit about the history. Fantastic firearm. Thanks for watching.